Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry aren't visible to anyone, not even to ourselves. It's the silent weight of worrying about what others think, the sting of a careless word, or the tight knot that forms in your chest when life suddenly throws you off balance. What most people don't realize is that true freedom doesn't come from fixing the world around you. It comes from changing how you respond to it. The Buddha taught that our suffering is not caused by what happens outside, but by the way our minds hold on, react, and cling. If you've ever found yourself replaying a conversation in your head or losing sleep over something you can't control, you're not alone. Today, I want to share with you powerful Buddhist insights that can make you emotionally untouchable, so that nobody and nothing will shake your inner peace again. Every lesson in this video is a step closer to a life where your calm is your greatest strength and nothing can disturb it. So don't skip any part of this journey. Each insight builds on the last, and I promise you'll come away with practical tools you can start using today. And if you appreciate what we're doing here, sharing these life-changing teachings and building a mindful, supportive community together, there's one simple free favor I ask. Hit the subscribe button. It means the world, and it helps us keep bringing this wisdom to everyone who needs it. Let's begin, and let's start building a life where your peace is no longer up for negotiation. There's a certain kind of tiredness that doesn't show on your face but weighs heavy on your spirit. It's the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying too much inside, from letting every small demand, every opinion, and every unspoken expectation wrap around you like invisible ropes. Most people go through life believing that if they don't keep everything together, things will fall apart. So we end up holding on to more than we should, carrying responsibilities that aren't truly ours, worrying about problems we can't fix, and stressing about how others see us, as if it's our job to keep everyone happy. But here's a gentle truth Buddha often pointed to. Suffering grows from the things we refuse to put down. Buddhism teaches that peace isn't found in controlling or perfecting the world. It's found in letting go. Yet, for so many of us, letting go sounds impossible. We're told that caring means we're good people, that we should always be available, always respond, always meet everyone else's needs. But real compassion, as the Buddha taught, is rooted in wisdom, not in self-sacrifice. If your mind is always racing, if you find yourself replaying conversations or second-guessing decisions late at night, you're not weak. You're simply caught in the habit of carrying too much. The more you try to hold on to, the heavier everything becomes. Your peace gets traded away for approval, your happiness for the illusion of control. What if, just for a moment, you questioned this habit? What if you asked yourself, does this really need my energy? Buddha used the image of the mind as a still pond. Every time you react to things that don't serve your peace, it's like throwing another stone into the water, making it impossible to see your own reflection. The more stones you throw, the more ripples and the less clarity you have. The truth is, not every problem is yours to solve, not every request deserves your immediate answer, and not every opinion is worth your worry. It's an act of courage to let go, to drop the ropes that don't belong to you. It's a radical kind of self-respect to give yourself permission to focus on what truly matters and leave the rest behind. This isn't selfishness, it's wisdom in action. When you care for the things that are aligned with your values, you reclaim the space in your heart that's been crowded by noise. The Buddha reminded us that freedom begins when we set down what isn't ours to hold. So as you move through your day, ask yourself, is this concern truly mine to carry? If not, give yourself permission to let it go. In that space, you'll rediscover a sense of peace and lightness that's been missing for far too long. This is how you start building an unshakable life, by carrying only what truly belongs to you. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from always feeling like you're responsible for how everything turns out, like if you just planned hard enough, worked smart enough, or said the perfect thing, you could finally make life behave. We've all been taught in some way that if we just do things right, we can guarantee the outcome, control the reactions of others, keep the storms away, and protect ourselves from disappointment. But if you're honest, you probably know this never really works. Life slips through your fingers in unexpected ways. People let you down, plans change, things fall apart or surprise you when you least expect it. The harder you grip, the more you realize how little you can truly hold on to. Buddhist wisdom speaks so clearly to this universal struggle. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we resist what is, when we fight the natural flow of life by demanding that things be different from what they are. We build imaginary walls in our minds, thinking if we try just a little harder, we can keep the chaos out. But in truth, most of what happens in this world is beyond our control. The weather changes. People change. Sometimes your own feelings shift before you can even explain them. The more we try to force life into our own image, the more tired, anxious, and frustrated we become. It's like chasing clouds and trying to tie them down with chains. The clouds just drift right through, unaffected while we wear ourselves out. What if instead of trying to control every detail, you could learn to let go just a little bit? Not by giving up or becoming passive, but by becoming present, by meeting each moment as it is, rather than as you wish it would be. In Buddhism, this is the essence of surrender, but not surrender in the sense of losing, more like surrender in the sense of finally letting yourself breathe. When you let go of the illusion that you must fix everything, something remarkable happens. You find clarity in the middle of the storm. You begin to realize that peace is not found in changing your circumstances, but in changing your relationship to them. There's a quiet moment in childhood when you realize that what you do can make someone smile or frown. At first, it's innocent. You learn that sharing your toy makes a friend happy, or that saying the right thing earns you a pat on the head. But somewhere along the way, that simple desire to connect turns into something else. It grows into a constant search for approval, where every action is measured by how others might react. We start collecting shoulds without even noticing how we should dress, talk, succeed, or even feel. It's like we're given an invisible script and told, this is the path to happiness, even though deep down, it never really feels like ours. Buddhist wisdom has always warned against this kind of conditioning. The Buddha taught that suffering arises the moment we mistake the external world for our source of truth. Think about that. How often do you shape your choices just to fit in, or silence your real feelings out of fear of being left out? It's as if we become actors in a giant play, constantly switching masks to please the audience, rarely pausing to ask, who am I beneath all of this? Society hands us a mirror, saying that our worth is reflected back only if others like what they see. And every time we accept that, a little bit of our genuine self gets hidden behind layers of expectations. This chase is exhausting. You might find yourself scrolling through social media, seeing curated lives and flawless smiles, and wonder if you're falling behind. Or maybe you've said yes when your heart was screaming no, just because you didn't want to disappoint someone. Over time, this can leave us feeling hollow, as if we're living someone else's life. The Buddha's teachings invite us to wake up from this dream, to step off the stage and reconnect with our own truth. He encouraged questioning. Are these goals, beliefs, and desires truly mine, or were they quietly installed by the world around me? So much of the pain we experience in life comes not from what happens to us, but from how tightly we hold on to the things we love, fear, or wish could stay the same. It's almost instinctive. We grip relationships, expectations, dreams, and memories with closed fists, believing that the tighter we hold, the more secure we'll feel. Yet the truth, echoed in every line of Buddhist teaching, is that clinging only brings us suffering. Think about the way a beautiful rose feels in your hand. If you grasp it too hard, the thorns will hurt you, no matter how much you adore its beauty. But if you let it rest gently, you can enjoy its presence fully, without pain. This simple truth reveals so much about how we should approach everything in life, from our ambitions to our relationships, from our joys to our disappointments. Buddha taught that the root of our suffering is attachment, not just to people, but to ideas, outcomes, and even the image we have of ourselves. When we grip life with a sense of desperation, we forget how to breathe. We stop trusting the natural flow of events, always trying to force things to stay just as we want them. Ironically, the more we try to control and possess, the more anxious and unsettled we become. Detachment isn't about turning your back on life, shutting off your feelings, or pretending not to care. Instead, it's about being fully present, open to each moment, without needing to clutch or claim it. The greatest freedom comes from allowing life to come and go, as it always does, with a soft, accepting heart. There is a gentle wisdom in detachment, a kind of quiet strength that lets you participate in life wholeheartedly, without being destroyed by disappointment or swept away by desire. When you hold things lightly, you start to see that everything is temporary. Relationships change, opportunities come and go, emotions rise and fall. If you let them pass naturally, like clouds drifting across the sky, you discover a peace that is untouched by what happens outside of you. Buddhism often uses the image of water flowing in a river. It moves effortlessly, embracing everything it meets, yet never clinging to any one thing. When you begin to embody this approach, you become more resilient, compassionate, and wise, not cold or indifferent, but beautifully balanced. There's a strange kind of exhaustion that creeps in when you feel responsible for every reaction, every comment, and every ripple in the world around you. It's as if your mind is always on high alert, scanning for the next thing that might disturb your peace or require your attention. In this endless state of watchfulness, even the smallest disagreement or unexpected silence can feel like a thunderclap. The Buddha taught that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from calming the storms within our own minds. So what happens when you finally let go of the urge to fix, respond, and prove yourself to everyone? The answer is simpler and more powerful than most people think. The first thing you notice is a new kind of quiet in your life, where there used to be a constant mental buzz, a need to check, react, defend, or explain. There's now space. Stillness. Instead of being drawn into every drama or disagreement, you start to observe things with a gentle curiosity, as if you're sitting on the bank of a river, watching your thoughts and emotions float by. Suddenly, not every opinion matters. Not every invitation deserves a yes. You stop chasing after validation and let your actions come from your own values, not the expectations of others. This shift is exactly what Buddhist monks practice when they retreat into silence, not to escape life, but to understand that real strength comes from within, not from winning every argument or pleasing every person. As you practice this kind of detachment, you may notice something beautiful. The world feels lighter, and so do you. Your energy is no longer scattered everywhere. You can give your full presence to what really matters: your health, your growth, your loved ones, and the practices that anchor you. Everyday routines become opportunities for mindfulness. Drinking tea, going for a walk, or simply taking a deep breath become acts of reclaiming your awareness. It's a gentle rebellion in a world obsessed with noise and reaction. Buddha taught the mind is everything. What you think, you become. So when you stop caring about things that drain you, your mind becomes a sanctuary, a place of quiet strength. There's a quiet battle happening inside each of us that most people never see. It's the constant flow of thoughts, some helpful, some anxious, some harshly self-critical, that seem to rise and fall like waves, especially when we're alone with our minds. Sometimes a single negative thought can echo for hours, coloring everything we do. Maybe you find yourself stuck in a loop, replaying old arguments or worrying about the future, and it feels almost impossible to break free. But what if I told you that these thoughts, no matter how loud or convincing, are not actually who you are? The Buddha understood this deeply. He taught that just as clouds drift across the sky, our thoughts drift through the mind. They come, they go, but they don't define the sky itself. The sky remains vast, open, and untouched, no matter what storms pass by. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing everything your mind says, especially the thoughts that trigger your insecurities or fears. For many of us, our thoughts can feel like facts, as if every worry, every judgment, every old story must be true, simply because it appeared in our head. But Buddhist wisdom encourages us to become gentle observers instead of unquestioning believers. Instead of fighting your thoughts, try labeling them, thinking or worrying or judging. When you notice a negative or anxious thought, pause for a moment and remind yourself, this is just a thought, not a command. This simple practice creates space. Suddenly you're not tangled in the storm. You're watching it from a distance, grounded in awareness. You might wonder why your mind sometimes seems so loud or restless, especially when you need peace the most. The Buddha explained that much of our suffering comes not from outside events, but from our attachment to the stories our mind spins. Thoughts are like guests passing through the house of your mind. Some stay longer, some leave quickly, but none of them are permanent, and none of them are you. When you meditate, you're not trying to stop thoughts from arising. You're learning to see them for what they are, temporary, ever-changing, and often unreliable. The more you practice witnessing your thoughts without getting swept away, the more you realize you are the calm, steady sky behind every storm. There's a moment in life when you quietly realize how much of your energy has been spent trying to please people who may never truly see you for who you are. Maybe it started early, when you first learned that a smile, a nod, or a good grade could win you approval, and that approval felt like love. Over time, that need for validation becomes like a quiet background hum in your mind, shaping your choices, your words, even your personality. It's so easy to get caught up in this chase, bending and twisting yourself just to fit the expectations of family, friends, colleagues, or even strangers on the internet. The truth is, the more you seek applause from others, the further you drift from your own center. Every compliment or criticism starts to feel like a wave that rocks your boat, leaving you anxious, uncertain, and disconnected from your true self. In Buddhism, this restless longing for approval is seen as one of the many ways we get caught in the cycle of suffering. The Buddha taught that freedom comes not from chasing after what others think of us, but from seeing our own worth clearly, like looking into a still pond. When the mind is agitated by the need to impress or be accepted, our reflection becomes distorted. It's like throwing stone after stone into calm water. The ripples blur the image and we lose sight of our real self. Buddhist practice invites us to let those stones fall from our hands and allow the water to settle. Only in that stillness can we see our true nature, unfiltered by the noise of others' opinions. Think about how much time and energy goes into editing ourselves just for the sake of fitting in, saying what's expected, hiding our quirks, even agreeing with things that don't feel right, simply to avoid disapproval. But what if you could lay down that burden? What if instead of performing for applause, you could rest in the quiet confidence that you are enough, exactly as you are? Buddha's wisdom tells us that the opinion that matters most is the one we hold of ourselves. When you practice self-acceptance, you stop needing the world's applause to feel valuable. The world's approval is always changing, but true self-worth is steady, like the pond that returns to clarity after the surface settles. We've all been there, agreeing to things we never wanted to do, nodding along when our heart was quietly shaking its head, forcing a smile just to keep the peace. There's this subtle pressure in life that tells us we must always be available, always helpful, always saying yes, even when we're running on empty. And sometimes, without even realizing it, we make a habit of putting everyone else first, believing that being kind means never disappointing anyone. But the more we stretch ourselves to fit other people's expectations, the more we lose sight of our own needs, our own boundaries, and even our own identity. It's a quiet form of self-betrayal, one gentle compromise at a time. Buddhist wisdom teaches us something radically compassionate. Real kindness starts with yourself. The Buddha encouraged us to treat ourselves with the same care and understanding that we offer to others. He often spoke about balance, about how pouring from an empty cup serves no one, not even those we wish to help. True compassion isn't about burning yourself out for the sake of others or shrinking your needs so someone else can be comfortable. It's about holding space for yourself, recognizing your limits, and honoring the truth of your own experience. When you learn to say no without guilt, you're not turning away from others, you're turning toward your own well-being, which is the foundation for any real, lasting generosity. It's important to remember that a boundary is not a wall, it's a bridge. It allows you to remain connected to others without losing your sense of self. When you say, "No, I can't," it's not an act of rejection, but an act of clarity and self-respect. You don't need to over-explain or apologize for protecting your time and energy. Every time you honor your limits, you teach people how to treat you. And more importantly, you teach yourself that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. In the Buddhist tradition, this is an expression of metta, loving kindness that starts within and radiates outwards. There's a quiet kind of suffering that comes from caring too much about results. You pour your heart into something, a relationship, a project, a goal, and the moment you do, a hidden part of your mind starts obsessing over what's going to happen next. Did I do enough? Will it work out the way I want? What if I fail? That anxious waiting can eat away at your joy, turning the journey itself into a source of stress. But Buddha taught a different way, one that goes against so much of what we're conditioned to believe. Instead of focusing on the harvest, he asked us to pay attention to the planting, to do our best with a pure heart, then release our grip on what comes after. This isn't giving up, it's an act of self-compassion, and it might be the greatest act of kindness you ever offer yourself. Think of how much energy we spend trying to predict, control, or force an outcome. We tell ourselves, if I just try harder, it has to work out. But life rarely follows our script. The seasons come and go, the rain falls or it doesn't, and not every seed blooms on our timeline. When we hold on tightly to how things should turn out, we trap ourselves in a cycle of disappointment and anxiety. Buddhism calls this attachment, gripping so hard to a certain result that we become blind to the present moment, missing the quiet miracles that are already happening around us. Buddha reminds us, do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. That means showing up fully, caring deeply, and then letting life unfold without twisting yourself into knots over what you can't control. There's a quiet kind of pain that comes from holding on too tightly to things or people that slowly drain your spirit. You know that feeling, right? When you stay in a situation, a friendship, a job, or even a family dynamic, hoping that if you just try a little harder, things will get better. You give more of yourself, you sacrifice your time, your energy, and sometimes even your dignity, just to keep the peace or avoid disappointing someone. And deep down, you start to notice your own light dimming. What we rarely talk about is that not every struggle is yours to fix, and not every environment is meant for your growth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep fighting, but to quietly, compassionately walk away. Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and it's not only about possessions or desires, it's about the ways we hold on to what no longer serves us. In Buddhist wisdom, there's tremendous value in knowing when to let go. It's not about abandoning people or being cold-hearted. It's about protecting your own peace so you can continue to show up in the world with love and clarity. Walking away doesn't mean you wish anyone harm or that you're running away from your responsibilities. In fact, it's a gesture of deep self-respect and even compassion toward yourself and others. Because when you stay somewhere your heart knows it doesn't belong, you're not helping anyone. You're just pouring from an empty cup. Think of all the times you've forced yourself to stay in places that drain you, telling yourself that leaving would make you selfish or ungrateful. But here's the truth. When you walk away with kindness, without anger or drama, you create space for healing, for both yourself and the other person or situation. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." That means your peace is sacred. You have the right and the responsibility to protect it. This is what compassionate detachment really means. It's not a loud goodbye or a dramatic exit. It's a silent, gentle withdrawal of your energy from places that leave you feeling empty. You simply start saying no to what pulls you down and yes to what uplifts your spirit. You stop explaining yourself, stop justifying your need for peace, and simply choose yourself in a quiet, unwavering way. With every silent exit from what drains you, you return a little more to yourself. You give yourself permission to thrive, and in honoring your own journey, you give others the freedom to find their own way too. There's a quiet strength in the person who can stay calm when everyone else is losing their composure. It isn't because their life is easy or free from challenges. It's because they've learned the art of holding their center, no matter what swirls around them. You probably know someone like this. They're not cold, not detached from life, but when problems arise or people try to get a reaction, they just seem rooted. Like a great tree standing tall during a storm, their branches might sway, but their core is unmovable. This kind of presence isn't magic, and it isn't something you're born with. It's a skill, one that the Buddha called equanimity, and it's at the heart of Buddhist practice. Most of us have spent our lives reacting on autopilot. Someone pushes our buttons, and before we know it, we're angry or anxious. The world throws a problem our way, and we feel compelled to fix it, defend ourselves, or explain. But each time we're triggered and react without awareness, we hand over our peace to the situation or the person in front of us. Buddha often reminded his followers that the mind is like a candle in the wind. If you don't shelter it with mindfulness, every passing breeze will blow out your light. Emotional non-reactivity is about learning to pause, to take a breath, and to respond from a place of calm clarity rather than knee-jerk emotion. So how do you build this kind of inner strength? Start with the breath. When you notice your pulse quicken or your mind start to race, gently focus on your breathing. Even 3 slow, mindful breaths can create a pocket of space between what happens and how you respond. In that space, you regain your power. The Buddha taught that we can't always control what life brings, but we can always choose the attitude we bring to life. Practice asking yourself, does this deserve my energy? Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every comment needs a reply. Sometimes the greatest compassion you can show for both yourself and others is to simply not engage in the drama. And let's talk about compassion, because non-reactivity isn't about building walls or pretending you don't feel anything. True compassion in Buddhism includes the wisdom to know when to engage and when to let go. When someone tries to provoke you, often it's because of their own suffering, their own restlessness. Meeting anger with anger only fuels the fire, but responding with steadiness, sometimes with silence, sometimes with a gentle word, and sometimes by quietly walking away, can bring peace to both sides. Your calm becomes an anchor, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. The deepest peace you'll ever know isn't found in a perfect world. It's found in a steady heart that no longer needs the world to be perfect. When you master the art of not reacting, not chasing, and not clinging, you rise above it all. Thank you for walking this path with me and being a part of Buddhist Journey. If today's message spoke to something within you, take a moment to watch one of the suggested videos on your screen. It may be exactly what your soul needs next. Until then, keep your mind clear, your heart light, and your spirit rooted in peace.